Hey, welcome back to the next holiday card video. Today we are using the Carmine Stamp from Penny Black. It's 40-792, and we are going to watercolor a Christmas card. I've got my Toffee Crunch Memento ink, my water cup, my Secure Koi field sketch box, and I'm going to stamp the large stamp in my Misty on a piece of Strathmore 140-pound cold pressed watercolor paper. I'm using the Toffee Crunch ink to stamp that out. I did stamp it twice to get a nice dark impression. I like the Toffee Crunch ink because it gives a no-line watercolor look without having to, but gives you lines you can actually see. So I'm starting off, I've added water to my petal, and I'm coming in with the Crimson Lake watercolor, and I've dropped it in the darkest area first, and I'm pulling that out to make it lighter, and then I'll come back in and add a little cadmium red hue to make it a little bit darker. And I'm going to work this way from petal to petal. I'm going to start off each petal with the Crimson Lake, and pull that out just like we're doing here, and then I will come back and add in a little Crimson Lake to darken the color up a little bit. While the paper is still wet, it's the perfect time to drop in additional watercolors because it will allow the watercolor to move without a lot of work. So here we are dropping in. This time I'm just going to drop in a little of the Crimson Lake to start, or cadmium red hue to start with. That way we will have a little variation in our petals, because not everything when you're painting in watercolors are the same. You do have different tones and variations of color, but the entire painting is done the same way. We drop in our lightest or darkest color, and we pull it out to make it lighter. Here I'm adding in a little second color to intensify that color. You can see how it started pulling out, and I'm just using my brush. I dip my brush in water, and then I'll take and put that onto the paper towel to soak some of the water off, and then smooth my color out. So I've added the water, I'm dropping in my darkest color, and I've dipped it in the water in my water cup, and I'm just going to pull that color out softly, and then pull up any ink or color that I need to pull up. I'm so used to stamping, I keep forgetting I'm using watercolors again. All right, we're going to do that same process through all the petals, but I do want to show you this. I have sped the video up, but I do want to show you the process of the painting. That way, and remember, anywhere a petal overlaps another petal, you're just going to be darker, so you're going to have a shadow there. That's why we just put that one shadow under that other petal. And now we're going to continue on. We're going to start working the other sections. I don't have to worry too much about working right next to each other because I am using such a small amount of water. Now, I did switch brushes. I am using my round brushes, but I started off using the black velvet. They're not my particular favorite. I prefer a synthetic brush, and so I switched to my heritage brushes. And I'm doing the toothbrush method, where I drop in. I have one brush that I just use for clean water, and then the other color has my paint and pulls it. I use that to pull the paint out. If I could talk today, we might be doing something. So again, we're using these same colors. We're pulling that color out in the darkest area, or dropping the color in the darkest area and pulling it out to the lightest. And you can see me switching between brushes. I'm using a size 4 round and a size 2 round to pull the color out. 4 I'm using to drop in the water, and then the 2 is what I'm using to drop in the color and pull it out. So you can see what a nice, beautiful gradient we get by doing it this way. We don't have to worry too much about shadows. And if you get too much in an area, too much water in an area, just use your paper towel, tape it like I just did, and pull it out. Take the water up a little bit. You can leave a little highlights by not adding water in that section. Here we're just darkening up those edges, and then I'll blend that out with a soft dry brush, where I just dip it into the water and put it onto the paper towel and just soften that edge. Excuse me. Right, so we're doing our rest of our petals, and then I'm going to work on this last petal here, and then we will work on the centers petals. But the whole process is the same. We drop in our darkest color. It's a super easy watercoloring technique. Drop in your darkest color, pull it out into your lighter areas to create your highlights and lowlights. Then we're going to add a little bit more color right here. I decided this didn't have enough. So I'm just coming back in with those same colors and adding a little bit more color in. Now for the second layer of petals, I do just use the cadmium red hue to make those a little bit darker. Because again, we want a little variation in our colors, and I am skipping around since my other petals are a little bit wet still. This way I don't have to worry about any bleeding. Switch back to add the water with the black velvet brushes. I do find them good for that. So we're just going to pull that color out. And I'm going to work these all the same. When I'm watercoloring, I like to work one section at a time and work the same areas. So like you saw, I worked the entire larger petals of both flowers, and now I'm working the smaller petals of both flowers. That just saves me time, and it saves from a lot of headache from switching between color to color. So you don't want to really work your petals and then go to your leaves. You want to work all of that same color. That way it makes it a lot easier for you. And with Christmas cards, we want our watercolor Christmas cards to be super easy. And this is the best way to do that. So we're just going to drop in those colors like we have been, pull them out. Remember, again, where a petal overlaps a petal, it's going to be darker. Now, you notice that last one I didn't pull anything out because it's so far underneath. And it's really so small, you're not going to really have to do a lot of blending for it. So, no big worries there. So, we're just almost finished here. Now, we're going to work on our leaves. And I'm going to clean my brush. And I'm going to put in my water. And I'm going to drop in olive green, and we're going to do the petals the same way. We drop in where we want the darkest and pull it out to the lightest. I'm going to drop in a little permanent green deep to deepen up those shadow areas where my petals are on some of them, and some of them I'm not going to because the light would be hitting it a little bit more, so we don't have to worry too much about that. And I'm going to pull off a little bit of that color there, drop in my darkest color, pull it out. Now this time I am working with the dry to wet technique. And that's where you put in your paper, your your color first, and then pull it out. You're putting it down dry paper and then pulling it out with a wet brush. That's what I should have said. But anyway, we're going to work this around. We'll work our petals, and when we get to the petals of the poinsettias, they're going to change that green color to make it a little bit different because we want a little variation. Here, I'm just going in with the permanent green deep. I believe is the color that I used. It could even be sap green, but I don't think it is. I believe it's just a permanent green deep. But we're working that dry brush method where we're doing the dropping it in the dry area, pulling it out with the water on our brush. And here I'm dropping in a little of the turquoise blue to change the color up a little bit because, we like a little variation in our colors. Don't be afraid to add a little color there because it's just going to make it a deeper bluer green. This time I decided to mix the color on my palette, and I'm just going to pull that out. And I don't worry too much about the super fine details because I can always come back and glaze over a color if I don't like it once it's dry, and deepen a color by using a glazing technique. So no worries there. I got a little outside of the line. I just blotted off with a little clean wet water and then in my paper towel. And then I'm just going to add that color, darken it out, pull it out to our lightest area. Drop in a little of that permanent green to change the color a little bit. We're going to work the rest of our green leaves on our poinsettias. Pull that out. So I hope y'all are having a wonderful time with the holiday card series. There's not much going on with us. We're just living life, enjoying ourselves. Just working hard, creating projects for y'all. Nothing really major going on. Ronnie's doing really good. We're working on potty training. Um, that's been a time. That's a story in itself, y'all. If you ever try to potty train a headstrong puppy, it's gonna be very tedious. All right, so we're working on our last petal. Back to the card. We're gonna pull this out, color out. It's a super easy process. Like I said, we've just got two more little petals to go, and then we're gonna work on our berries and our centers of our poinsettias. I like painting with these watercolors. They're super nice. And really inexpensive. I got the 30 count fill set, and it was only like $26 on Amazon. So it's a good set to have for painting cards. Excuse me. All right, so here I'm going to glaze over this area. I decided I wanted a little bit more redder colors, so I'm just coming back in with that Crimson Lake and just glazing over a little bit to change up those colors that I didn't feel like they smoothed out enough. So I'm just going to glaze over them with a very thin wash of this Crimson Lake and just come right over those, smooth everything out, and wham bam, it's all nice and prettied. We'll do that to the rest of the petals using that same color. You could even use one of the pinker colors to give it a more pinker hue, which may be what I did. I really can't remember now. It's been several months since I've painted this. I'm doing the voiceover. But I have all the colors listed on the blog post, along with all the supplies. All right, we're going to glaze over these petals. Soften out some of the colors that's there. I'm just using that Crimson Lake, or Cadmium Red, I'm sorry. I don't know why I keep saying that. All right, so we've got that all nice and fixed. Now we are going to work, well, I'm going to add a little bit more color there in the shadow area. I guess I'm deepening up our shadows. Softening all those edges with a damp brush. All right. I have a tendency to overwork things. You haven't noticed. So it was fine to begin with. I don't know why I'm working it again. Who knows? All right, we're going to darken up our shadows on our leaves and blend those out to that same color that we have been using. Apparently, I didn't think they were dark enough. All right, now I'm just painting in my berries, and I'm not going to do a lot of blending. I'm just dropping in color in one side, and I pull it out with a little damp brush. And I use the Carmine Cadmium Red hue and the Crimson Lake. And each berry is like, one is the Crimson Lake, one is the Cadmium Red hue. To me, it adds more interest to the berries. So now I'm going to paint in my little stems. I'm just using a paint. I really thought I drew that in, but okay, I painted it in. All right, so now for the yellows, I'm using permanent yellow and yellow ochre, and I'm doing that same thing where I'm just dropping in the two colors in the different berries. And I got a little bit too much water out there, so I'm just going to sop it up with a paper towel and come back and add more color. Now I'm going to stamp my sentiment. My sentiment comes from Banner Sentiments from Penny Black. It's 30-423. I'm trying to decide which one I want to use. They both say the same thing. So I'm going to stamp this and not turn black Versafine Clair ink. This is my best black ink. All right, I've got that on there. I'm going to dry that with my heat tool. Excuse me. Now I'm going to take a mask and stencil. This is just an open square stencil. And I'm going to add a little ink blending around the edge to draw your eye into our focal image. And I believe it's chip sapphire, not chip sapphire, tumble glass, I think is what it is. But don't hold me to that. I can't remember. But I'm going to kind of avoid the areas where the leaves are. I don't want to really go over the painting too much. I want to just get where the open areas of the stencil is, and that really gives me my focal point. I'm going to take a white gel pen and add my highlights in just here and there on each leaf and on the berries. And then I'm going to end up drawing a stitched line with the white gel pen around our stitched area, or around our ink blended area. And don't be afraid to draw your line. Just go in and go for it. It's going to be okay. It's handmade. No one's going to tell the difference. So we're just going to draw our stitch line. And then all I have to do to finish my card off is pop it onto a card base. This is a standard A2 card. Thanks for joining me in this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys.